Some look at this place and only see a football field.
But it's more than that.
This is hallowed ground.
This is an opportunity.
To build a league of culture, passion, and purpose.
To live a dream.
Our work is cut out for us, but we wouldn't have it any other way.
This will be earned. We'll give it every last ounce of football-loving energy in the tank.
And then we'll give it more.
Our hearts.
Our souls.
This is for the players, the coaches, the cities, the fans.
For stories untold.
For potential unrealized.
We are hungry. We are humble.
And no one will outwork us.
The XFL is back.
Back for the love
of football.
What is up, my friends, and welcome to another edition of the XFL Week in Review. I am your host, Mark Perry, editor of XFL News Hub. On this week's show, Spring 2022, we have it all covered. We hear from Jay Noakes and my interview with XFL insider Mike Mitchell. We go over the timeline of things that happened, what's he been hearing behind the scenes, all sorts of insider information from the number one XFL insider and Mike Mitchell. So we have my interview with him, as well as all the latest news about this spring kickoff in 2022. Are you excited? Did the video make you pumped when you saw it? It made me pumped. I am ready. It's disappointing because it's not 2021, but actually it totally makes sense. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, we'd like to thank As Heel for our nice little border that he did for us there. We appreciate that. And speaking of, you want to be part of the show, you get in touch with the show, you email podcast@XFL News Hub with your MP3 or videos, or you call 888-430-7692 extension 3. And remember to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We need it. When we read it on the show, we need those to get the word out about our show as we dive into and we drive and we move to kickoff in 2022. And the funny thing is, we've done this before, so we can do it again. Jeffrey Pollack has said multiple times, the CEO and president, one of the things that he has said before is the XFL, they view the XFL as a 100-year brand. So this is just 1 year in that 100-year brand. We can wait, let everything, all the crazy, kind of chill out, and then we can move forward and get on and be excited about when all this stuff will start to happen again. And Mike Mitchell and myself go through all of that. So you got to stay tuned for that interview. I'm sure you're going to like it. He's always a great resource. Now, that's it. We're going to go through the news. We got to hear from Jay Noakes, another XFL insider from Pro XFL News Hub. We got him, and then we'll do the news. We hear from Jay Noakes, and then we'll hit my interview with Mike Mitchell. So without further ado, folks, let's just get into the crazy week. We're back, 2022 spring. Let's get into the week that was the XFL. The XFL is back, baby. The XFL is returning to action in the spring of 2022. Why do we know this? Because The Rock says. That's right, The Rock announced on his Twitter that the XFL will return to play in the spring of 2022. Quote, XFL Returns Spring 2022. As owners, we're proud to champion our XFL players, coaches, cities, and fans into an electrifying 2022 season. It's an uphill battle, but we're hungry, humble, and no one will outwork us. A league of culture, passion, and purpose. XFL, hashtag XFL Spring 2022. There you have it. They announced it. There is a video that goes along with it with The Rock and Danny Garcia talking about what's happening. It's been a wild ride for us XFL fans, I'll tell you that, from the inaugural kickoff in 2022 to the league shutting down its doors after 5 games, to the bankruptcy over the summer, and then to the surprise purchase of the league by The Rock, Danny Garcia, and Redbird Capital. And now the XFL is back, so much so that the video is now on their YouTube channel. It's the first time that they've had something on their YouTube channel in 5 months. It's been 5 crazy months. Co-owner Danny Garcia posted the following, quote, "No one will outwork us. XFL, hashtag XFL is back on the field in 2022. So there is the plan. We also have the official press release of the XFL announcing its return. It says, decisions allow ample time for the league and its new owners to develop and execute a strategic and innovative plan for the relaunch. This is what the press release says. Quote, the XFL today announced that the league will return to the field for the 2022 season. The new ownership group and league executives are in the process of finalizing next steps for the relaunch, with more details to share in the coming weeks and months. The announcement was made by Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson through a video shared across all the social platforms. It says, quote, the XFL represents the idea of ultimate opportunity. It's a league of soul and culture, anchored by the pursuit of dreams and love for the game that we couldn't be more proud to lead, said Garcia and Johnson. Every XFL player, coach, city, and fan is our top priority, and we couldn't be more excited to champion them in an electrifying 2022 season. We are the new XFL, hungry, humble, and no one will outwork us, close quote. For the love of football and for the safety of our players and fans, we'll be back in the field in 2022. That comes from Jeffrey Pollock, the XFL president and COO. So now he is back in that role with the XFL. He goes on to say the opportunity in front of us with our new ownership is simply too big to rush back. We want to do this properly with care and thought for everyone who loves football, especially our players, coaches, partners, and fans. In August 2020, Danny Garcia, Dwayne Johnson, and Redbird Capital Partners acquired substantially all the assets of Alpha Entertainment, the parent company of the XFL. So Jeffrey Pollock is back. We have a season coming in 2022. More details will to follow. And ultimately, am I disappointed? A little, yes, because I wanted to have the season now, right now. Let's have a draft next week. In all practicality, with everything going on in the world, and it just makes sense to do this right, because you only get one shot at this reboot of a reboot. Do it right, get everything in line, and then go with the 2022 spring. Now, is that going to be in February, March, April timeframe? We would like it to be in that April timeframe. We've talked about it on the show. Also, this doesn't mean that news is going to end. I have a feeling by the time we hit January on in 2021, we're going to get coaches hired. We're going to get staffs in place, team presidents. We're going to have training camps and that kind of thing over the summer. So there's going to be plenty of things to cover, and getting the players involved, I think, will be in 2021. Will be kind of where we're going to go. So there'll be plenty of news. And then basically a year from now, we'll have the draft, and just like things were going before. And hopefully now don't worry about having a season in a bubble. We can actually go to games when the XFL kicks off once again in 2022. Are you ready? For the love of football is back. So when news broke Thursday morning that the XFL would be returning to play in the spring of 2022, excitement with a little bit of anxiety over it was our first reaction. But what about the players and coaches who have been waiting to hear about the XFL 3.0? Well, the XFL players received an email in the morning as well, and XFL News Hub was able to get a copy of it. It says, quote, we hope you and your family are healthy and safe and doing well as possible during the uncertain and difficult times. Earlier today, we announced that the XFL will return to the field in 2022. We are going to take our time to come back and ensure that we will build a league of culture, passion, and purpose for the benefit of our players, coaches, staff, partners, and fans. And given the continued uncertainty of the public health environment, a 2022 relaunch will help us provide a safe game day experience for everyone together. Our 2022 season will arise on a foundation you helped establish, which is why we wanted to say thank you for your passion and play last season. The XFL will always be a league of great heart, and we want you to know we very much appreciate your heart and soul as a football player, athlete, and human being. Please visit www.xfl.com to see today's announcements. Thank you. And for the love of football, Danny Garcia, Dwayne Johnson, and Jeffrey Pollock. This was basically an email saying thank you to the players and not necessarily an invitation back, but that should come at some point. The baseline, remember, for the return of the spring of 2022 has now been set, and there's a lot of parts that need to be filled in during that process. So this isn't just This was just kind of a thank you, reach out to the players so that they know they don't know where they stand, but they do because, hey, we're putting this thing back together. A lot needs to be done between now and then. You have preseason events, coaches need to be hired. It's unclear who's available, who's still interested in returning as coaching. There's TV deals, all sorts of stuff. Team facilities need to be lined up and staff, and we still need a commissioner, really, before anything else. So why would you bring players back if you don't even have a commissioner? But it's all coming back. The XFL site has been updated, and posts to the league's social media have happened also, which is good. So if you're an XFL player interested in a thing, we've talked about the Spring League as a way to get your name out there. But just like all of us, we have to wait and for the next move. And this takes time to restart this league. I think they would have done it if it maybe wasn't for what's going on in the world. But I think the best thing, and Jeffrey Pollack has said this multiple times, that they view the XFL as a 100-year brand, that what's 1 year if you think you're going to be around for 100 and you want to do it right. So we'll just have to stay tuned and find out what's the next steps as we do to the road. Basically, we're on the road to 2022 XFL season and its return. Former Battlehawks QB Jordan Ta'amu tests positive for COVID-19. Uh-oh. The XFL recently announced that it will make its return, of course, in 2022. And a lot of factors included in that decision was what's going on with COVID-19. Well, the NFL has suffered a rash of infections over this past week. And now we've learned that Battlehawks QB Jordan Ta'amu has tested positive. According to Ian Rappaport, he said it's not just New England, talking about Cam Newton, but Chiefs practice squad QB Jordan Ta'amu has tested positive for COVID-19 and is being added to the reserve list. That's according to him and Mike Garafolo. The news came on the heels of learning that Patriots' Cam Newton also tested positive. Ta'amu's current team, the Chiefs, were scheduled to play the Patriots this week, but now that game is up in the air. Jordan practiced this week with the scout team in Newton's role to get the Chiefs ready. He did that last week with playing the Lamar Jackson role. Then that worked out pretty well for the Chiefs and not my team, the Baltimore Ravens, I just want to point out. No one else on either team has tested positive so far, but by the time this video comes out, who knows what's going to happen. We learned that Titans had multiple players test positive after their Week 3 game, and that thing was kicked off and moved and actually affected the Ravens' schedule as well. It's been a tough week. 2 games have now been postponed. Looks like more is on the way. And the XFL took a little backlash from fans and others saying that why would they delay? But now you know the decision to wait until 2022 is probably the right decision. Ta'amu was one of the top QBs in the XFL in 2022, second only to P.J. Walker in terms of wins and stats. I would throw in Josh Johnson in there. He was able to turn an amazing season into another shot at the NFL. And has been good. Head coach Andy Reid has praised his play, and he said, of course, helped the team get ready to play against Lamar Jackson, which they won, blah, blah, blah. So we at XFL News Hub hope Jordan Ta'amu gets well, thoughts and prayers, and hopefully this doesn't spread to anything. And Cam Newton, everybody else involved in the NFL and XFL, just to stay safe out there, my friends. I'm not sure how these next couple months will go in the COVID world. The Pittsburgh police have arrested former Guardians right tackle and current Steelers practice squad member Jaron Jones for alleged assault that happened early Saturday morning. Jones has been charged with 2 felonies and a misdemeanor in what police say was a physical altercation with his girlfriend. The police were called at his residence at 2 a.m. and arrived to find a woman walking out of the apartment crying and obviously disturbed. Once she told them there had been a fight, they immediately detained Jones, according to the report. The complaint obtained by Pittsburgh Post-Gazette says that Jones returned home by himself after a night out with his girlfriend. She returned home later, started yelling at him and breaking things in the apartment. The victim says he strangled her and struck her in the face, but Jones denies doing so, also saying he picked her up and put her outside. The police report says there were abrasions on her arms and chest area. First of all, why were you out? Doing what? There's a whole pandemic and people are getting sick in the NFL. Just throwing that out there.
The Steelers are aware, and GM Kevin Colbert said the following, quote, "We are aware of the situation regarding Jaron Jones. We are gathering all of the details of these disturbing allegations, but we will not comment any further at this time," close quote. The Steelers signed Jones to their practice squad after cutting their roster down to the initial 53-man roster. He was selected in the first round of Phase 2 by the New York Guardians of the XFL draft to play right tackle. After playing defensive line at Notre Dame, and he played on several NFL practice squads. It was announced that Fox Sports and the Spring League have reached a TV deal. This will give XFL fans a chance to see potential future players of the XFL for the 2022 XFL season. It also gives players out of work from the CFL and XFL a chance to have some game film and be evaluated by scouts. So if you're a player looking for a tryout in the XFL, the Spring League is where you go. The XFL's use of the Spring League was extensive prior to the 2022 season. It was the home of many of the XFL rules and TV production testing. Now, when the XFL was doing their testing with the Spring League, we couldn't watch it. But now it's on TV, and it'll be on Fox Sports. Now, the Spring League isn't a minor league for the XFL, but is a quarterly league that gives players a chance to perform in front of scouts. They get worked out, they have some games, so they get some game film and to show scouts, etc., and make a name for themselves. Some guys who have played in the Spring League have made their way to NFL, XFL, and CFL rosters. The thing is with the Spring League is you actually have to pay to play. There's something in there. But this Fox Sports agreement is kind of interesting. So Fox Sports has reached a multi-year agreement to televise the Spring League, along with the option to acquire a minority stake in the league. That's an interesting little tidbit. The Spring League will begin its fall season October 27th with 6 teams competing in a 12-game format over 4 weeks in San Antonio. Fox Sports 1 will air the games on Tuesday and Wednesday. That seems fun, especially to fill in the time for us XFL fans. The league had previously been used by the XFL and Alliance of American Football before they started playing. The XFL and AAF ceased operations midway through their first seasons. The XFL, though, was recently acquired by a group led by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in hopes of resuming play in 2022. The Spring League CEO Brian Woods said in a statement that they are conducting a fall season in order to give more playing and development opportunities due to reducted in rosters during NFL training camps and the CFL canceling its season. TSL does plan to return to a spring season next year as well. This will be the 4th season of the Spring League, and the league says almost 100 of its players were signed to NFL contracts and 65 to CFL deals. The most famous alum was the 2012 Heisman Trophy winner Johnny Manziel, who played 2 seasons for the Browns. He had a little stint in the Spring League as well. We will be covering the Spring League games because we feel that there's a potential that some XFL players could come out of it, get some names. So we'll be covering the Spring League extensively on XFL News Hub. Also because we don't have a season until 2022. So there you go. But it should be fun to check out and watch some of these games on Fox Sports 1. We're very excited about this announcement.
If you haven't heard, the XFL has decided to relaunch the league as a spring 2022, which is a great thing. A few things to note here. When Vince McMahon's XFL announced that they would be launching in January of 2018, they had a planned scheduled launch date or time for spring 2020, which afforded them a ton of time for them to get all the logistics down, and most importantly, for them to work on the operation side of everything. Keep in mind the XFL still has to hire people in all 8 markets in order to, such as social media, front office personnel, whatever it may be. They do have to do all of these things. Also, you have to have a draft player pool that you have to develop as well. So this gives them an ample amount of time to do so with their plans to relaunch in 2022. I'm sure that there will be more announcements coming down the pike. I'm not too sure when that will happen, but we do know that since they have made this announcement, there is more to come, and Danny Garcia and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson are doing everything that they can to create sustainability and longevity for the XFL going forward. And this announcement to me means that they're saying, all right, we're going to pivot and we're going to ensure that our fans are satisfied with the product, and also that they can look forward to spring football year in and year out. So I love the move by the new league owners. I'm looking forward to hearing more news as it develops. Please be sure to give us a follow over at xflnewshub.com, and also follow all of our writers and insiders for more content. Thank you, guys.
All right, I'm with XFL insider Mike Mitchell on the program to give us the latest. Yes, the last time we talked, we were talking about Fox and maybe Disney, and people were really interested in that. Now we have The Rock, Danny Garcia, Redbird Capital, and we have a timeline of spring to 2022 is when the season would start. But I wanted to point out something that you had in your article that recently published about June timeframe. So I guess, what are you hearing about that?
Well, several people reached out to me in the lead up to last week's announcement that the league would be relaunching in 2022. And several different sources reached out to me to indicate that the hiring process for a 2022 season would begin in June. Now, some people indicated May as well. In terms of that, and it would give the league, presumably, if the league plans on launching play in February of 2022, it would give the league about an 8-month window to get all their teams lined up and working full steam ahead towards the 2022 season. So that's the timeline that you would figure as well, that would be the timeline that the league would be having player workouts, tryouts, the draft, or whatever player allocation system will be put in place. Football operations going to be hired to head up that department. We're in the early stages. I'd hate to term it as a skeleton crew, but it is at the moment. It's Dwayne and Danny's ideas, Redbird Capital's ideas in terms of finances, and Jeffrey Pollack and his team right now planting the seeds that are going to need to grow in the coming months.
So June is the timeline. So so would that be presidents, coaches, that kind of thing in June, or would you get presidents?
Those would be the first. Things to drop in terms of, you'd have to set up the business infrastructure of each team, and that includes having fully staffed front offices, and then right now there's a lot of, as been documented on our site at XFL News Hub. Josh Davis has done a lot of work in this department in terms of the legal side of things. There's a lot of legal wrangling going on in terms of setting up venues and building up partnerships for the league moving forward. And I think, once you have a lot of that set in place and an idea of where the teams are going to play when the 2022 season happens, then you can kind of set up the infrastructure of each individual team. It appears at the moment, and it looks like it, that we're going to have the 8 original XFL teams. Where the venues are set up is not quite clear at the moment, although some of the previous venues that were used for the 2020 season appear to be on the table. We'll see how that transpires. But there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of wrangling, a lot of stuff that needs to be done in order to head towards that pathway. And the 2022 window gives the league a little bit more time to do that correctly.
So that's included. So you're saying you don't think, basically, what about a commissioner? So a commissioner, would that come in June, or?
That could be one of the first announcements that we get in terms of who's going to be heading up the football operations department. As I laid out a few minutes ago, you kind of have like I said, I don't like to use the term skeleton crew, but that's really kind of like what's going on right now in terms of, Jeffrey Pollack's division right now is smaller. That's obviously going to grow over time. And then you've got, of course, the owners and their support staff and what have you. But we're a long ways away from that. So you would think that a lot of the football operations hires would take place over the course of the next few months, weeks upcoming, because that's going to be important. If there is a commissioner role, who's going to be heading that, and then who's going to hire the key hires in the league's front office in terms of scouting and all of that. So those are important hires. Those are going to be just like as we witnessed during 2018. Once Oliver Luck was hired, Oliver Luck hired Sam Schwartzstein, and then Eric Galco and Optimum Scouting were brought on. And then those were the first, big football hires, so to speak, before even, locations and then coaches and everything else were hired, team presidents as well. So that's the order of things. So the football operations side would be the first important section, for lack of a better term, that the XFL would need to fill in order, because a new commissioner, a new head of football operations will decide where the league goes in terms of how they allocate players, how they set up a free agent system, how they draft, all of that.
Yeah. So really, fans just really need to be like, hey, we're really not going to hear any major hirings until June. But then it seems like June is in effect what the offseason would have been this year, of June 2021.
I think June is more of locking in all the teams in terms of their staffs and everything like that. I think we'll start to hear about other hires way before that, because I think, like, for example, Vince McMahon announced the relaunch of the XFL in January of 2018. It wasn't until June of that year that Oliver Luck was hired. Once he was hired, it was a long time frame between Oliver Luck being hired and then football coaching staffs being put in place and everything else. So I think we're going to get a commissioner announcement way before the June timeline. The June is more, May or June is more about locking in team coaching staffs, front offices, staff members, etc. However the ticketing plan is, everything else like that. So, so there's a lot that goes on in between, but I think one of the key hires is coming soon. I don't think the league is going to wait until June to announce who's heading their football operations and scouting department, etc.
Gotcha. Now, as far as the players go, is it still the same idea that players, like Cardell Jones and Josh Johnson, even though this is way in advance,
Right,
would still be the quarterbacks of their teams, and players who played with, the Battlehawks, they are basically still Battlehawk players? I think they're just going to start everything from scratch.
That's yet to be determined, but you would think that the league would want to bring back some of its more recognizable players from the 2020 season. So if Josh Johnson is game in 2022 or anyone else, you would think that because the same 8 teams are returning, and then presumably and hopefully some of those coaching staffs, June Jones and others, return along with the league as well, then there would probably be some type of this would have to be determined by the commissioner, but in terms of like a player rights system where teams get to claim the players that were previously on their team, because now we're looking at a 2022 timeline rather than 2021, there could be some changes and alterations in that. We don't know. Whoever heads up the football department, we don't know if that individual is going to go for a territorial system. We don't know how so those things are yet to be determined, but you would like to see some of the Battlehawks' most prominent players return to St. Louis. And likewise, would like someone like a Josh Johnson, if he's available and willing to do it. It'd be great to see him play in California again.
Mm-hmm. So the Tampa fans who are anxiously awaiting a Steve Spurrier hire, they would have to wait until probably 2021 to hear any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's a contingent. A lot of it is contingent. There's still some, legal wrangling going on behind the scenes in terms of the coaches and money they were owed and all that. And then whether or not they'd want to revisit the XFL. Bob Stoops and obviously Spurrier has hinted towards wanting to return to the XFL, wanting to be a part of spring football.
Yeah.
And Spurrier has shown interest. He pushed Stoops in the direction of choosing the XFL a few years back. So it depends. It depends if Mark Trestman wants to return and whether the new head of football operations wants to have Mark Trestman. These were the head coaches were by and large picked by Oliver Luck and recruited by Oliver Luck. Mm-hmm. So any new commissioner may have a different design on who they want to be coaching these teams. I mean, Luck went to Canada to recruit Mark Trestman after hip surgery. He recruited June Jones heavily, who turned him down initially. Mm-hmm. So Bob Stoops, obviously, Luck using his connections there and sending out feelers to Bob Stoops to get him hired. So Oliver Luck is not part of the equation now. None of these these coaches that I mentioned are under contract with the XFL. So who's to say whether or not a new head of football operations decides to go in a different direction? and who Dwayne Johnson, Redbird Capital, and Danny would be interested in coaching in the league. That remains to be seen. But there's no guarantee that the coaches, the head coaches, or the coaching staffs that were a part of these teams return. Personally, I want June Jones back in the league, but not my call, obviously.
Right. So now that speaking of Danny Garcia and The Rock, it seems like part of what their envision of the XFL that's a lot different from the Vince McMahon, Oliver Luck 2.0 era is that they want a kind of reality TV type show, something like, have you been hearing anything about potential like behind the scenes show or something coming first before the league kind of gets going?
That's the expectation. Everyone I've spoken to is that the two biggest ingredients in the new XFL is Danny Garcia and Dwayne Johnson, and the plans they have for the league are very they're multi-layered and complex. They're not looking to just get on the field and play. They want the plan that they have for an entire presentation of the league itself is a year-round presentation with content that complements the league. So that's going to mean documentary shows that follow, perhaps, and a lot of people would watch this, follow Dwayne Johnson and Danny Garcia during all the behind-the-scenes moves they make for the league, as well as the teams and the players and the coaches and everything else. So one of the reasons 2022 is happening, Redbird Capital is certainly a big factor in that in terms of their finances, but one of the main reasons, you could argue the number one reason, is because what Dwayne Johnson and Danny Garcia have planned is multi-layered and complex and is a huge entertainment element for their rollout of the league. They weren't going to rush into these things, and I think I mentioned in a recent article I wrote on XFL News Hub, The Rock and Danny Garcia, in order for their vision to be realized, they're looking for the right partners that can embrace that vision and also help them execute it. What that means is, looking for someone who's going to buy in completely. Now, what networks that will be, who knows? But as many people know, Danny Garcia has connections to Hollywood and a lot of different networks. And Dwayne Johnson's like an octopus. He's touching everything from NBC to HBO Max. So there's a lot of possibilities for the league, and I definitely think that there's going to, and I know that a big part of the new XFL is going to be in the Hollywood-like presentation of the league.
So that's kind of the new nuance that they're going with. So
right, and it's complicated. That's not an easy thing to pull off. And Dwayne Johnson and Danny Garcia have shown in the past that a lot of their plans are grand. They don't do things small. For lack of a better term, nothing that they no endeavors that they encounter or have interest in are half-assed. They go all in. So to simplify it, so that's their plan with the XFL, and that's why 2022 is a much more attainable goal for them accomplishing that vision than a few months, because we're almost in 2021 as we speak. So the league's not ready yet to what they want to do, because they're not looking to do a scaled down league and just rush it out there, play for about 6 weeks, and then go home. They want to go all in, and they want to be presenting a fully fledged football league in a different way than we've seen any other sports league.
So what about then, because during the whole process, there was, hey, we could spin this thing back up and a season in a bubble. So did you hear anything of why they said, 2021 is just not going to work? Let's just kick
all
it
of
to
that
2022.
was discussed. The possibility, all of that was discussed. The possibility of a bubble season. Obviously, there was an initial bubble plan set up for the league prior to the XFL filing for bankruptcy. That a proposal that was made by Sam Schwartzstein, the director of football operations at the time. So the league was looking into the possibility, and the new ownership group looked into all their options as far as 2021 goes. And it would have been scaled down. You're talking about, from a financial model too, you're talking about the inability to sell tickets, which is crucial for a league like the XFL. Established leagues like Major League Baseball, the NHL, NFL, and otherwise, they can afford to take the financial hit that they've been taking because of the pandemic. Leagues like the XFL can't afford to have limited ticket sales, limited sponsorships. And then above and beyond that, there are no guarantees that the XFL would even have been able to start off in February, not because they wouldn't have been able to get it together and get everybody in one place and play 6 to 10 weeks or what have you, but there's no guarantee right now, and I'm hoping I'm wrong on this, that the NFL doesn't have some delays.
Yeah, we've seen that this past week.
Yeah, and there's an article I wrote on XFL News Hub back in April, before the league filed for bankruptcy, which was talking about the possibility that the XFL 2021 season would have to be moved back. Potential NFL delays. Now, the NFL has the type of flexibility where they can push back their Super Bowl a month if they have to, and all the networks will go, whatever you want to do, we'll wait for you until you're ready. No one's going to tell the NFL, hey, we've got other things on our TV schedule, so you're just going to have to book it and wait till next year. So in the case of a league like the XFL, you can ask the networks, hey, I know you have sports programming set up in May, June, July, etc. But we're having all these issues. Can you wait for us? So that's kind of the story there. We've seen it right now with the NFL. They've done a very good job considering they're not in a bubble system, but the recent outbreak with the Titans, the uncertainty with tonight's games, the Chiefs and the Patriots because of Cam Newton testing positive, and Jordan Teamo, unfortunately, former Battlehawks quarterback. We've seen the challenges that the NFL is facing, and pretty soon they're going to run out of get out of jail free cards. So what's going to end up happening is they're going to, hopefully this doesn't happen, but there's always a possibility that they'll run out of the type of solutions that they had for the Steelers and Titans by just reworking bye weeks, and they'll have to extend the season or push the playoffs back or make other. So hopefully it doesn't come to all that craziness, but it's a possibility. That would have affected the XFL too if the XFL had set a particular launch date in February, and then all of a sudden the NFL season playoffs are pushed back, and the XFL has nowhere to air their games. So chaotic altogether. So, and just for what the XFL has planned, 2022 makes more sense than 2021 because there's still a lot of uncertainty from the financial end and unfortunately from the public health crisis that we're going through.
Yeah. So do you think Christmas time, I mean, I'm thinking do you think that we'll even start to see maybe season ticket packages for 2022 season, or do you think, I'm just thinking, Christmas time is, people are spending money, even though everything is the way it is right now. Do you think they're going to do anything? Or are you basically everything essentially for the most part is going to be on pause until we get to this June time frame?
Yeah, if you notice, and some people have noticed this on the XFL's website, they've revamped it a little bit, and they're mentioning tickets, obviously the refunds for the 2020 season, and then they're also mentioning the teasing the possibility of tickets going on sale once all plans are set. So I don't know if Christmas or late this year is a hopeful kind of thing. It would be great if the XFL can set that up. That's part of what's going on behind the scenes too. Is part of the legal wrangling is to set up what venues all these teams are going to be playing in. And the 2022 season gives the league the hope that they can have a traditional sports league where there are home and away games, where they can sell tickets, have fan engagement, all that. Hopefully the world gets in a place where that's a reality. So I think it's possible we could get some news on that front in terms of what venues, where the teams are going to play, all that. And that'll help set the stage for ticket sales and everything else. And I think the XFL is already on their website reaching out to the fans to let them know, sign up. We'll let you know in the future. Sign up to our email list, everything else. We'll let you know in the future when these things become available. So work in progress, but they want to head towards that direction. One of the reasons 2022 over 2021 is the possibility of actually having fans at the games, which is, vital for the quality of the league, but also vital for the league's business end.
Yeah, I would love to see what the St. Louis Battlehawks season ticket sales will be like this go round. All right, my final question. Your prediction's sure to go wrong because we always like to do that. Who do you think would be the next commissioner of the XFL?
That is an excellent question. All right. The Washington football team recently hired Jason Wright. And, I had planned on potentially speculating on the future commissioner on the website, but then he was hired by Washington, and he worked with Sam Schwartzstein in the XFL a little bit, counseling, giving advice. He's an excellent hire by Washington. So, but, they could go outside the box and hire somebody like an Amy Trask, who worked with the Raiders. She works with CBS Sports. She's been in an executive role, somebody out there who's forward thinking and football smart. So she could be a possibility. For the for, for the sake of this, I'll go with her at the moment because kind of caught me off guard with that because it's difficult to pinpoint. There are a lot of I don't know Bill Polian's game for
Yeah.
returning, coming into the fire and doing it again. He was doing a very good job with the Alliance. There are a lot of quality football minds out there and GMs, guys who've been executives who could potentially take on that role. You want the commissioner doesn't have to necessarily be someone with a strong football background as either a player or a GM, but it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I mean, look at the NFL. I mean, Roger Goodell is a lawyer, and the first person I thought of would be a guy like Eric Moses, but he's left, and he's working now with NASCAR. I was like, oh, that he would have been a good potential fit, working the DC market. And so, I mean, it doesn't, because at first I was like, well, it needs to be a football guy, but then I'm like, well, the NFL didn't. Goodell, and then even I think before him, they were all lawyers before that. So
right, if you look at Jeffrey Pollock's half brother Gary Bettman, he's more of a business lawyer type. Worked with the NBA and he's with the NHL now. Obviously, NHL did a tremendous job with their bubble and handling of the pandemic, and they just finished their season with the Tampa Bay Lightning winning the Stanley Cup. So you don't have to necessarily be like Oliver Luck, who's a former quarterback and executive all over the place. That helped for sure. But it is important, no matter who the head of football is, it's important that all the other departments have people who have strong football experience, whether it be anybody who's in charge of scouting or any of the other different football relations parts of it, obviously the rules, everything else. So it doesn't hurt. Moses would have been a good candidate for sure. He obviously got a very nice job with NASCAR.
Yeah, and I need to point out that he didn't leave because everybody got let go.
Right.
Just meaning that
exactly.
he found a new job, doing something, that's a big time deal. I mean, because I was even thinking maybe even one of the team presidents as well.
You could
Former
think
team
of
presidents.
team presidents, and if you're thinking about it like a traditional commissioner, and you're looking at obviously Bill Polian was with the AAF, but if you think of a traditional commissioner, there was good GMs in the XFL as well. Randy Mueller with Houston and a few others that I don't know if they'd be up for the task. It's not an easy one, that's for sure. Whoever commits to that type of role is, it full well knows that it's going to be a difficult task, and it's going to have to be someone that, Redbird Capital has a lot of connections in the sports world. So they've worked with Jerry Jones and the New York Yankees and everything else. So, perhaps any head of football hire will come from one of those organizations or teams. So it's people they have familiarity with in terms of sports management, sports business. So, and if it's more of a traditional GM, like I mentioned, Randy Mueller, there's guys like, I don't know if these guys would even consider this stuff, but Scott Paoli's or Mike Tannenbaum's or any of these top football execs or GMs that have experience that have been around the league for 30, 40 years or what have you, that would have an interest in doing it. It's a monumental task, whoever takes on the role. But I do think that the XFL needs to have a very strong football operations department. Obviously, whoever heads that is going to be an important figure in the league's future.
Yeah. I'll throw a name out there. Moose Johnson.
There you go.
Another guy. But
that's
who
terrific.
knows?
That's funny that you mentioned Sunday. I'm watching the Browns-Cowboys game, which, I had a lot of fun watching that. Maybe it wasn't so much fun for our colleague there at XFL News Hub, Jay Noakes. But from a selfish reasons, as an XFL fan, it was fun listening to Moose Johnson and Burkhart call the game, and then Dean Blandino in the studio giving official calls. So it's hard not to think of the XFL there. It was an exciting game. And then for selfish reasons, I also, enjoyed the fact that Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and Odell Beckham did real well for my fantasy team in our league. But yeah, Daryl Moose Johnson, to get to your point there, he would be terrific, extremely intelligent. Obviously, have quite the experience that a lot of the other front office people have, but we saw how good of a job he did with San Antonio in the AAF, and then obviously Dallas in the XFL. You couldn't get a better figurehead than him. Such a tremendous speaker, likable, all that. So that's somebody like that would be tremendous as a figurehead of the league for sure.
Yeah, well, we'll see. All right, Mike Mitchell, we appreciate you checking in with us and giving all your insight. I'm sure over the next couple months, we will chat again and figure out see where things go from here.
Yeah, it should be fun. It should be starts all over again. So
yes,
we're back on that ride again, like we were from 2018 to 2020.
Yeah, I was hoping not to be on that ride, but hey, it gives us more time to work on our fantasy football app and some other things. So I'm like, okay, I'll take it. So thanks again for checking in.
I appreciate it. Thank you. My pleasure.
What's up, XFL Army? If you're a fan of the XFL News Hub and you have a telephone, which I know all of you do because you're sitting there playing on your phones all the time, then why not download the XFL News Hub app? That's right, it's on iTunes. It's on Android. We have an Android version and an iPhone version of the XFL News Hub app. So what do you get? You get the latest news from XFL News Hub, the premier source of XFL news in the universe. Plus, you get push notifications when we have breaking news. You will be the first to know. You can leave a comment on some of the news right from your phone. Plus, you get this podcast on your phone as well. Remember, you can leave us reviews on the Google Play Store or iTunes. It links to other social media, our other social media accounts, and so much more. Be in the know. I know you're on your phones. People are on their phones all the time. They never get off their phones. So why not just download the XFL News Hub app on your Android or iPhone today? All you need to do is go to the Google Play Store or iTunes and just type in XFL News Hub. That's XFL News Hub. Download our app on your phone today. All right, let's get to our social media stuff. A lot of reaction to the XFL returning in 2022. Michael says, I'm very disappointed in this. Can't imagine why they wouldn't start in 2021. Well, our interview with Mike Mitchell kind of lays all of that out as to why. I hope that answers all your questions. Not enough time to get things in place and too risky with everything going on in the world. That's what Scott says. He's right. Playing in the bubble, we've talked about that. It's just not going to work. Casey says, good call. They need fresh players, no washed up NFL players, new young college players. Give them like 1 or 2 years, maybe 3-year contracts so they can stay in the league. That way they can be stars or even look good before they go to the NFL. They go to the NFL the next year, no stars, the league will flop because it more or less helping the NFL in the summer. Diana says, I'll take it. I love this league. Agree with you there. I've said this before multiple times when it comes to this league. You don't need stars. There are no stars in college football because they leave after a couple years. So this whole idea that build stars and they'll leave and it's going to ruin the league, it's not. It didn't ruin college football. It didn't ruin college basketball per se. You'll be fine. About Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's tweet that just got everybody all fired up. Sandra says, so happy the XFL is back and ready for kickoff in 2022. Season 5 weeks into the season this year was good enough for it to return. Agree there. Vargas, 4 weeks after the league has been bought, I mentioned about 2022 season and added a bit more to that comment. I deleted it, though, thinking I was wrong. Well, no, you were right. On the XFL return to action, more about our announcement that it's back. Brandon says 2022, can't wait. Steven says hopefully ESPN will do fantasy. No worries about fantasy because we will have that covered. Yes, we will have, absolutely by 2022, we will have XFL fantasy just for you guys. And even if ESPN and Yahoo and these other guys do it, we'll have it ready for you too. We'll actually have a beta out for our pro wrestling fantasy, which will basically be the same system for the XFL fantasy. That's going to be out by the end of the year, and therefore we'll be ready to go with a spring 2022 fantasy game. That I can pretty much guarantee for that. The XFL site also is updated. We talked about that. Michael says, I am so pissed. I think he's talking about not having to wait. We're all a little disappointed, but as the conversation between me and Mike Mitchell, you get the sense of why we have to wait till 2022. On the politics article that Mike had put out, Richard says, what's the player pay structure and do you have the money to be viable and pay players? I don't have the money and viable to be play players. I think you're thinking of the XFL. How long before you get a paying TV contract? I would love to know all of that stuff. It's too early in the process to answer any of those questions. Zach, that email from Paul was 100% spot on, and we should try to figure out how to get him some sort of corporate job with the league. It was. We made Paul's email 11 reasons why the XFL 2021 should start in April. We put that out and in a day or two, and it was great. got good reaction, and then they announced 2022 instead of 2021. 11 reasons why the XFL 2021 season should start in April. Now it will be in 2022 for some of the reasons what he laid out. The Olympics being in 2021, uncertainty that we talked about with the NFL season. It was the right move. It's not what we wanted, but it was the right move. Marcus, so nothing for 2021 at all. What happened to the bubble tournament? Mickey Wind answers him there, but also there's no ad money. It's just too risky. It is too risky. Like I've said in other times, Jeffrey Pollack has said this is a 100-year brand. Therefore, 1 year, we've done it before. You're just going to have to wait on that one. Paladin says, nice. Amandor says that is bad news. I have to watch the no fun NFL league, Giants and Jets losers. Yeah, that's unfortunate. True American says can't wait until 2021. If San Antonio can get a team, we will support it to the very end. AC Hook, I wonder if they're going to have more teams. That would be great. I doubt it. I think they'll stick with the 8 teams. They're not going to do anything crazy. Jack says, let's go. I'm so happy. So are we. Finally get some news out there about the league and kind of where we're going and our timetable. And now we're set and we know what's going to come. June is a May, June time frame. We'll start to get it picked up. And basically, like I said in the interview with Mike Mitchell, June is going to be like our off season. We're just basically paused, didn't have an off season for a year. And then 2021, we'll get coaches in place. We'll get things cranked up again. Isaiah says the MLFB and Freedom Football Leagues should start spring 2021. Good luck with that. That will never happen. Tube1FN says, awesome. Please move the Vipers to Orlando or move the Wildcats to Orlando. O-Town needs a team. We'll see what happens now. We'll have a lot of time in between to see where could these teams actually shift. There's no rush into things, so this will be very interesting. Mr. Pete Channel says, I thought the stadium in Dallas was closing. No, but they're all good. That I don't know if it's closing. I mean, they will play soccer there. We'll see. Again, XFL, Dallas isn't going anywhere. Michael says, now get Oliver Luck back. He is not coming back. Creep O Freak says, yes, bring it on. More football. I love the sport. Should be played year-round. It'll be fun. There's no question about that. So thanks for the messages on that was the YouTube. On the Twitter, a bunch of stuff. Amy Krockenberger says there still won't be any fans next year attending games. How are they supposed to pay players without that income? I think we're talking about the 11 things. Jazz Ferguson said he's ready. Somebody says stay ready, Jazz. Definitely. Zach says, as a lifelong Buffalo Bills fan, I love the XFL 2.0. The unique rules and broadcasting were a breath of fresh air. I eagerly await 2022. Us too. Let's see what some other stuff. P. Ramirez says, do y'all think that teams will have their players return, those that can / want to, or will they redraft the teams? I hope they keep as much as the original teams as possible. I'm thinking, and they're going to keep the teams as much as possible. I mean, it is a far way out, so we'll see what happens. We will see. XFL Mark casts, as an Dragons fan, I would love to see some shakeups with the roster. I doubt Zorn comes back, and it would be good for a fresh start with the same cities. I don't think the cities are going to change. I think Zorn will be back. Seattle was doing decent. You had BJ Daniels come in there, and things started to happen. Who knows? We got a whole another year. Be interesting to see what players are available and what happens with the CFL too. P. Ramirez says, as a Roughneck fan, I would like to see Cam Phillips and Nick Holley and the entire offense, for that matter, return. I'm sure PJ Orker would not be back, but one could hope. Agree with there. Does the players still, this is from 2020 hindsight, do the players still have to pay to play in the Spring League? Maybe Fox Sports can give them a couple bucks. I assume they still have to, they still have to pay them. There's no question about that. Maybe now that the league has a little bit more funds, they can help them out a little bit more, maybe. But yeah, no, you have to pay to play in the Spring League. Richard says, good news. The XFL looks to players' performance, and hopefully some of them will be in the 2022. No question about that. Reaction to Darnell Parham's touchdown on the Twitter, of course, was exciting too. Some of the videos we posted on Instagram. Moonbeam says yes. People are sad. Max Schuster WX is sad, but I'm agree with that. Go get ready. Houston _ Dream Chaser. Yes, yes, yes. Long Island, Strong Island super fan. All right, Strong Island. DC-Defenders News says I can understand why they did this. Way with uncertainties of the 2021 season, and they want time to plan, maybe move some teams and get smaller stadiums for some teams like New York and Houston, and maybe doing a draft with high school players. Not going to happen. I don't know. Possibilities are endless. That's no question about that. We didn't want to hear it, but it was the right thing to do. Jack Stevens 7092 says, love the new website. They have some stuff up there about season ticket hold. If you had an issue with season tickets, they have information about that, so you can pick that up and just keep checking that site, and they'll have more information as things move forward. Donald Parham with the TD. Thomas Nucky says, Donald Parham with the TD, baby. That was awesome. So excited for Donald Parham. One of our guys getting a touchdown in the NFL was pretty dang cool. On to the emails. Good evening. This is from Jeremy. Ran across a recent article he had written regards to the XFL. And with you being a guy who is in tune with the league, I want to touch base. Did you know to reach out player personnel for the league by any chance? Player personnel. There is nobody doing anything right now when it comes to that. And if you heard from our interview with Mike Mitchell, more than likely that stuff is not going to happen until June. So no player personnel stuff. Let's see. New stadium in Salt Lake. This is from Carl. Says the owners of the Utah Warriors professional rugby team announced today that they are working towards building a 10,000 capacity stadium in 2023. In the announcements, they said the Warriors would be co-tenants with other professional sports teams. It won't be soccer. There are already 3. Salt Lake has their own teams. Have you guys heard any rumors about the XFL looking at Salt Lake in the near future? I have not heard Salt Lake. Interesting place there. But again, I would guarantee they're keeping the 8 teams from here on out for a while before they do anything crazy. Jamal checks in. He had a new email address. That's why I got that wrong. Who gives a bleep about people's politics? They bitch and moan. I don't care about it. I still watch sports regardless. I can tune out the other stuff like a heel actor that you like are gonna hate that person behind the character. Last, you cop any XFL merch lately? Dick's Sporting Goods had a month ago. I went over there, grabbed. I don't know. I spent like $100 and something bucks. Got the kids DC Defender shirts. Got my buddy a DC Defender shirt. So yeah, there was still stuff in there. It's getting thin, but there was still DC Defender stuff at Dick's Sporting Goods. So check your local Dick's Sporting Goods if you're in an XFL area. There might be some merch there. He says, I'm waiting for Black Friday to snag some Roughneck stuff. I wonder if they'll have some sales, maybe, of their merch. You don't need to change the logo. You don't need to change anything. Just, you got to focus on getting a season under your belt and worrying about this other stuff. So leave the merch the way it is and definitely, hopefully, get some sales. Almost forgot, is Team Issue still going to be the football providers for the XFL? Don't know about that. I mean, because remember, you have all this bankruptcy going on. He said, on a side note, I could see you doing a political podcast with a bunch of faces on there. I don't know about that. That would be bad. I'd have so many people hate me probably. And I just can't deal with it. I could deal with it a little bit, but not all the time. Not all the time. It would drive me nuts. I've even thought, sports talk. I don't want to talk about baseball. I would talk a little bit about the NBA, NFL, XFL, but like baseball and these guys, I'm sorry. Like, when do you have time for your family and you watch all these sports? Like, I wouldn't want to watch sports all the time. I want to watch Netflix, or I want to watch Family Guy or something. It would just drive me nuts I can focus on one sport and one league like the XFL. I have no problem doing with that. I can do that all day long because it's fun. But these guys that do this other stuff, they don't watch all those games. There's no way. They would have no wife. They would have no kids, like nothing, because all they would have to do is watch sports. You telling me these guys watch every single football game on a weekend? No, they don't. But they play like they do. Jim checking in on the email says, Mark, great news about the return of the XFL in 2022. I think it makes sense to not play in 2021 with a year plus to the next XFL season. What are your thoughts about adding 2 teams to make it 10-team league? I just don't think so. I mean, you got to think that June, they're not doing anything. They're going to need that first season needs to play through. Remember, 2 more teams equals sets of coaches staff, sets of players, sets of team presidents, all this extra money they have to spend. Stick with 8 for now, a year or 2. Somebody drops a major contract for you guys and wants more content, then you can do it. But that first year is sticking with 8. I'd be stunned. I think it's doable. There are cities I would think I would love a shot at the XFL. If I were to add 2 cities, I would go with San Diego and Birmingham, Alabama. We got lots of Birmingham fans out there. I think the XFL can also expand to many more points in the U.S. and Canada after seasons 2 or 3. Very exciting times for XFL fans. I really enjoy your website. Great information on a daily basis. Jim, South St. Louis Battlehawks fan checking in. I am super excited. I'll tell you this. I will make a trek next year, 2022, I'm going to a Battlehawks game. I want to be in that stadium. No question. And I would, if I was the XFL, now that we know everything going on, that first game needs to be in St. Louis at home. Your biggest stadium, return of the XFL. That place was going to sell maybe 60,000 seats. Can you imagine a year in the waiting for the Battlehawks to come out? And all you St. Louis fans, you can break out your Battlehawks gear again because you're coming back. That's good. John checking in says, talking about FS1, the Spring League San Antonio, September 27th through November 23rd. Is TSL Las Vegas still scheduled to proceed? Enough players for both? Yeah, so they're doing TSL, and we're going to cover it extensively on XFL News Hub, the Spring League. That's happening in October. That's October 27th. I don't know what you're talking about, November. I think they're going to do one in the fall. Winter, I'm not sure about, and then one in the spring, perhaps. And that will be all on FS1, which will be a lot of fun to watch. And speaking of fun, let's check with a phone caller.
Hey, this is Richard, better known Richard O. for real on Twitter. I'll have to say I'm happy that SFL is coming back in 2022. I think The Rock and Danny made a right decision because by the end there will be a vaccine for the virus and everything go back to semi-normal. And I know it will never be the same, but, I think it's the best move. And all I have to do is just wait and see what team president coming back, what coaches coming back, and, TV deals. So I'm excited again to wait it out. So thank you.
All right, Richard checking in. We're excited too. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a little quiet the next couple months, and I still plan on just doing a podcast. We'll just keep it rolling, keep doing videos, keep doing our thing. We're not stopping. If there's absolutely nothing to talk about, we'll make something up. But everybody's excited. There's no question about it. Just having that timeline, and there'll be announcements like we talked about, commissioners, etc. Finally, our Tier 1 emailer, Nicholas, checking in. I was happy to finally get some news of the XFL. The news was kind of bittersweet. I was a little shocked that I would not see the XFL in 2021, but I am happy to know that they are taking their time to get things right. I hope they move LA to San Diego, Oakland, or even Sacramento because they need a fan base in California to grow their team. The same can be said for Tampa. Should be moved to a place like Orlando, or a shock to some in Columbus. Interesting. No, we need to have a nice place to go in Florida to watch some football. The XFL needs a solid fan base, gives them time to find ways to get more exposure and rethink what they had already done. It helps them to take their time in finding a commissioner, true. I previously recommended Jim Nagy and Mike Polinsky. I'm very happy to get some news, and I'm looking forward to getting some more. Nicholas checking in as well. Thank everybody for checking in with our social media. All right, I want to thank all our social media stuff. I want to thank Jay Noakes for checking in, giving his take, and of course my very interesting interview with XFL insider extraordinaire Mike Mitchell. That May-June timeframe is where things will kind of start to take place, so you have to stay tuned for that. If you want to be part of the show, of course, and As Heel with our nice little thing on YouTube. If you're not subscribed to YouTube, what are you doing? Why are you not subscribed to our YouTube channel? You jabroni. I'm very disappointed in you, just like a parent. Very disappointed in you. So subscribe to us on XFL News Hub on YouTube. If you want to be part of the show, podcast at xflnewshub.com. Tell us know what you think. Or call 888-430-7692, extension 3. Follow us everywhere, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube especially. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll read it on the show. Plus, we got our apps. So we plan on upgrading the apps. We promise you will have fantasy football in 2022 from XFL News Hub. That is being worked on right now. The one caveat to the spring of 2022 was, I have a little time to get this app and this site, everything, this fantasy, totally awesome for you guys. If you want to know more about what's going on and maybe being a beta tester, you got to hang out at our Discord, which there's links in the show notes to join our Discord. And because we do talk about XFL fantasy in there, if you want to be part of that. Leave us a review. We talk about that. You can listen to the show anywhere there's podcasts. I think now we're on a couple other new ones. So you can find us anywhere. Show notes, xflnewshub.com/xfl-podcast. Of course, join our Discord, especially if you're into XFL fantasy, because you guys are helping me build the XFL fantasy app. I have my ideas, and my ideas are usually the best. That's why I love having guys like Mike Mitchell, Jay Noakes, Matt Nagashima, the 20 Matts that work for us at XFL News Hub, Josh Davis, another one, all the guys in there that they give me information, their ideas and stuff, and we're just this one big team, and we're super excited about that. We'll get some more of the writers on here to chat with you about what's going on in the XFL world. So thanks for listening. Mahalo. We'll see you next week. Wear that mask. God bless y'all. Really, I mean that. Stay safe out there, and I will see you all later.